Hey, everybody, welcome back to our live show. We're going to answer some questions again on equine fitness. If you're joining us live, you can drop your questions in the chat and I'll answer them or do my best to answer them as they come in. A few of you reached out from the last time we did this till today with a couple of questions, so I'll get things rolling with those. And this is a fun way to connect with you all, see what issues you all are dealing with, and explore horse fitness together. I want to thank Redmond Equine, the good folks over there, for keeping my horses healthy with their minerals and also keeping me hydrated with Relight electrolytes. And you can get 20% off at checkout at redmondequine.com with the code JECB20. So JEC, the letter B, 20. And that's never expires, 20% off at Redmond Equine. So a question came in. It was a person for whom I designed a custom fitness plan for her horse. And one of the exercises that I had suggested the horse do a certain number of times was, one of my favorites, was to trot over a ground pole on the ground and then immediately pick up the canter. I love this exercise for so many reasons, but it really helps horses just kind of roll into the canter. It helps them stabilize a little bit through the trunk as they're making that shift from trot to canter. And it's a good way to keep the horse kind of forward thinking so they don't get bulky and wadded up. But the person did reach out and she said in the past, her horse has been prone to, in that moment of canter departure, kind of throwing in some bucking. And historically, that has been due, in her belief, to discomfort and or anxiety about the canter produces this situation. And so obviously we don't want to put the horse into a situation where it's uncomfortable. And so at this point, the listener's question was, how do I know if that bucking into the canter is just like extra exuberance and energy versus no, this is like uncomfortable? And I had prescribed the exercise to be done ridden, but her question was, are there ways to like maybe modify it if it seems like the horse is going to go into a bucking spree? So first of all, knowing that your horse might have that behavior in there, definitely this is still a productive exercise to do from the lunge line. And one of the things I recommend to kind of feel things out and to determine if it is pain versus weakness versus maybe just extra energy is, number one, is see if that response is consistently repeatable. So let's say you decide to hop off their back, put them on a lunge line and perform the exercise, and absolutely every time they go to pick up the left lead, there's like this bucking antic that happens. I think you can pretty clearly decide, okay, there is something going on here. We don't want to push it. We're not going to make it better by just drill, right? Especially if you're not getting that same response the other direction. If it's extra energy the horse has, typically that initial response is just that. It's just initial, like the first or second time they get their kicks out, and then from there on out, it's smooth. If there's no sign of distress and worry, no ear pinning, teeth grinding, tail swishing, etc., then it's probably okay to carry on with the exercise. But feel it out. So is it consistently repeatable? That's kind of how I approach this. The other thing is like, what happens after the horse finds itself in the canter? Does it then speed up like a demon, like it's really uncomfortable and worried? Does it pick up just the correct lead in the front, but the hind end is all disorganized and kind of cross cantering back there and all kinds of cattywampus? So explore, once it gets into the canter, how's the canter look? Does it seem like something to kind of settle into and find rhythm? If so, we can build on that, and we do want to execute a few more reps of the exercise instead of just decide, oh, let's leave this alone because there might have been one little bunny hop or buck. But it is hard sometimes to parse these out, whether the horse is telling us like, hey, I'm uncomfortable or not strong enough to do this, or I might just have a little extra energy. It might also just be a learned behavior. Like maybe for years, the horse has bucked when it picks up the left lead, for example. And that can take some unwiring. And that would be a conversation for another time. Is like, how do we then unwire or rewire that? So that was on that specific exercise. Another person wrote in with a question on, it was another person for whom I had designed a custom fitness plan for. And her question was, so typically with some of the horses that are rehabbing from an injury or a long time off or something like EPM or some forced time off. So typically, the way we work is we have a period of weeks where we really emphasize what I call corrective exercises. And these are the slower moving, a lot of work in hand, not all of it, but a lot of work in hand. The stationary exercises that are good for postural development, muscle activation, and then we progressively build into the more gymnastic exercises, and we increase both the volume and duration of exercises as well as the, I won't call it intensity at that point, but like the complexity and the demands of the actual exercises. So this person, because of her busy schedule, was wondering, because sometimes we will separate the corrective exercises from the gymnastic work on a given day. Do the corrective exercises first, and then you'll ride maybe a little bit later, sometimes immediately following. And her question was, if I'm super time crunched, like, does it matter if I do the corrective exercises before or after I ride? My main point is, at the end of the day, just do them when you can because they're so valuable. So if you need to do them at night when you do your barn chores and that's the only time it's going to happen, that's fine. The biggest priority is that they do happen. In a perfect world, they happen first before your ride or your more gymnastic groundwork session because they activate muscles. So when we're trying to strengthen muscles, it is very helpful and productive for the gymnastic exercises to actually have any effect. It's very necessary to activate muscles. And we're talking about core muscles. We're talking about the deep muscles is what I mean. So these techniques, things like many of us know as butt tucks and backing up in a careful way so the horse has a good posture. These sorts of techniques activate, hopefully, I mean, that's the goal. The horse is in a good state of mind. They're paying attention. They're done well. They activate the postural muscles. And that is very, very important for motor nerves and sensory nerves to develop good neural pathways. So the nervous system is primed and ready, and it absorbs the exercises that follow. So that's why in a perfect world, we want to do the corrective exercises first. But like I say, they are going to benefit your horse's nervous system regardless of when you do them. So the important thing is don't skip it if you feel like you can't do it the way your coach or your vet might have told you. And that is the value. Like the value is to activate muscles that we then build on. Okay, so moving right along, there was a question that came up on a presentation I did recently, and this is an interesting idea that's being batted around a little bit in the horse world more recently, is the idea that horses should not be exercised every day. I think maybe where this came from is the idea that horses don't need to be trained every day. The idea being that it's kind of too much stress, we're kind of flooding the nervous system. They're not benefiting from it as much as if you ride, say, every other day or every 2 days. So again, I think the confusion that people have, so people were asking me, well, what is your opinion? Since, as you all know, I am a huge advocate of more exercise for the horses, not less. And I think, as I said, that I think this is a little bit of a confusion in separating what we mean by schooling the horse or training a horse, especially a young horse, versus the movement that we deliver the horse for the purpose of just strengthening their body and making them really functional for good, healthy life, as well as to perform their disciplines. And what I mean by that is, I personally agree that it's not, I don't think it's productive to drill the discipline, like let's say dressage or certain footwork patterns for some of the Western disciplines, like every single day. First of all, from a physiological standpoint, it's not beneficial because you're recruiting the tissues at the same intensity day after day after day. And as I talk about a lot, repetition of any sort, even if it's good training, is bad. We want to do our best to avoid repetitive movement over and over and over. But secondly, also just from like flooding the nervous system with stimulus that sometimes is stressful. Learning new skills is, there's positive stress, but it's still stressful for the horse. So I agree that horses shouldn't be schooled every single day. Like my horses do dressage 3 to 4 days a week, but they're not consecutive days. They are, however, ridden almost every single day, and that's 7 days a week, because remember, active rest is better than passive rest. So my takeaway is, I don't agree that horses shouldn't be exercised or have movement every day. I think most domestic horses need more movement, not less. And I think a lot of, lamenesses or health issues that crop up are actually worsened by removing movement from their life. But movement can take all forms, as you've heard me say before. Like, productive movement can look a number of different ways. It could be hiking your horse up in the hills for 3 to 4 miles and enjoying the wildflowers that are finally coming out here now that it's spring. It can be a hard session in the arena. It could be a jumping session. It could be ground driving. Like, there's so many ways to move a horse's body. You can pony a horse next to your horse cruising down the road and get them good, healthy movement, but not be schooling them. And especially for young horses, it is very taxing, both physically and mentally, to be schooled every single day. So movement, yes, every day, but being sure, like I always say, that there is novelty and there's variety across that spectrum. So I think a lot of this research has come out from looking at horses, especially with ulcers, and potentially worsening those conditions based on where the ulcers are, with daily training. But again, we sort of need to step back and ask ourselves, if ulcers are seeming to be worsened with horses that are in a really regular work program, how much of that is the mental load, as well as their lifestyle, where they're kept, where they're stable, their social life, etc. So there's a lot to it, but generally more exercise is better than less exercise. Also had a question come up recently. I was giving a presentation for one of the chapters of the United States Dressage Federation, and we were talking about the value in small but frequent walking sessions on hard surfaces, because dressage horses in particular do spend a lot of time in arenas out of necessity, and that is a soft surface. And when horses' feet are only exposed to soft surfaces, what happens over time is a diminished proprioceptive engagement. Like, the proprioceptive system, all those little sensory units that communicate with the nervous system, start to sort of, the signals get a little foggy, if you will. And walking on firm ground is a terrific way and simple way to keep the proprioceptive system heightened. It helps. I'm not saying like it prevents total erosion, but it does help. And in many rehab programs with horses that have been injured, or when you send your horse to a rehab program, commonly, depending on what injury they're coming back from, if it's appropriate to do so, commonly walking on hard ground is part of the rehab journey for that reason. Really valuable in motor retraining. So this student's question was, as I recall, she didn't have access to, miles of terrain. She pretty much just had the arena and then maybe some surrounding areas to ride. And her question was, what about in my warm up, if I just kind of walk up and down the driveway for 10 minutes? And I was like, absolutely. For one, that is a terrific way to start loosening your horse up, because you're avoiding repetition, right? You're in a different area. You're on straight lines versus all these turns and circles we make with our horses. And straight lines are critical for developing symmetry in the horse. So yeah, spend that 10 minutes either in your warm up or your cool down, walking around whatever firm ground you have. Maybe you have a road nearby your arena. Maybe you have a driveway. Maybe you have a DG path, but use it. It's incredibly valuable. It's one of those things that just seems so simple that we overlook it, but the horse's physiology does benefit. So sneaking in these kind of helpful little add-ons to your warm-ups and cool downs are incredibly beneficial. And then I'll just finish up with a further recommendation building on my last video. It's exciting to see more and more research coming out about helping horses recover from major downtime that's forced by injuries or things like colic surgery. And we're getting to the place now where we are learning more about how their bodies work and muscle function, where we're understanding the value in when horses do need to be confined for a period of time, still being able to give them, stationary exercises, corrective exercises similar to how they treat human patients post-surgery. So like right away starting to bring some mobility and again muscle activation without then going and moving the horse around and doing damage, but preventing everything from just going into this completely switched off state. So it's exciting to see that happen. And just a reminder of the value of what might seem like minimal exercise for those of you that might have limited time and or have a horse that's been confined for some reason. The value in the consistency of these things like tail traction and wither wiggles and shoulder circles and just basic walking when the horse can walk, continuous uninterrupted walking. And the last exciting thing I'm going to close with is my new book is coming out very soon in June. It's called 33 Strength and Fitness Workouts for Horses. I'm so excited for this book to finally be there. It is complete workouts for horses, both groundwork and ridden workouts. And I think it fills a need in the industry, and I'm super psyched to finally get it out there for you all from Trafalgar Square. And so look for that coming in June. And any questions you have, send them my way. We'll get to them in the next Q&A live. And thanks for all for being here. Take care. Till next time.